Welcome to Around the Kitchen Table podcast. My name's Rochelle. I'm a certified herbalist and the owner and founder of HappiHerbs. Today, I am with a special guest. This is my father, Colin Morrison, and he is the owner and founder of Manchester Coffee. He has the best coffee you guys will ever drink. I'm not a huge coffee drinker because it just gets me way too jacked up. But if I am going to drink coffee, it is his coffee. It is so good, you guys. Like, he's like, humbled. But I'm telling you, you will never taste anything as fresh as his coffee. And my dad grew up in England, Manchester, England. And then you lived in Manchester, Jamaica. And so Manchester coffee is
Is how the name came to into being.
right, because you lived on a coffee farm in Manchester, Jamaica.
Correct.
And so you learned a lot about coffee.
Yeah, grew coffee, harvested coffee, and yeah, it was quite an experience. Never thought it would be something that I'd be doing later on in life. It's just strange how everything panned out.
Yeah, I remember when you started that coffee business. I just remember boxes everywhere and coffee everywhere. And now it's this really amazing and successful business and, has carried our family. So it's definitely a blessing. Now, to get into it, today we're going to be talking about marriage and relationships. And I wanted to get my dad on here because how long have you and mom been married for?
Uh, 36 years.
Are you sure? Mom's listening. We're going to get in trouble if
Yeah, it's
you're right.
36. 36.
36 years. So I wanted to talk about marriage and relationships because if you guys have been following in my previous podcast, we did pregnancy and postpartum. And then we went into parenting because I thought that kind of went with it. Having a baby changes your life. Parenting, I think that there is a lot of mental health that needs to be discussed and even physical. But when we are parenting, we're usually parenting with a partner, whether we're together or we're not. And so I really wanted to take this opportunity to do a podcast on marriage and relationships and how we can do that in the healthiest way possible. And I myself have been married for 10 years, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I can give you guys the best marriage advice. So I wanted to get someone on here who actually has lived through marriage a lot longer than me, and probably a lot longer than a lot of our listeners. And I think a lot of the wisdom that my dad is going to give us today, it's not, yes, it comes from him and his experiences, but a lot of it comes from the Word of God. It's really the wisdom behind it. And none of us are going to sit here and pretend like we have perfect marriages because there's no such thing as a perfect marriage. And if anyone tells you they have the perfect marriage, they're lying to you. And so, but there are definitely some good morals and values and principles that we can follow so that we can have a healthier marriage.
Correct.
So I wanted to start with the topic of mentorship because I think it's so important that we have wisdom from our elders. And that's exactly what we're doing right here. I find for me, the mentorship that I get when it comes to life and my marriage is usually from you. I'm usually asking you and mom for advice because you guys have good advice. And then other than that, it's like my therapist, people that I trust who are further in that category, right? And so what do you have to say about just surrounding ourselves with good mentorship?
Well, good mentorship is going to depend on where you hang out, what company you keep. Um, it's going to be like for me, from my experience, I went to church, and you would see marriages at church. You'd see how men court their wives and how wives would treat their husbands and the children, and you'd see that that wholeness of that family unit. And sometimes you would see some really great examples.
Mm-hmm.
and you would like, say to yourself, I want to be like that, or is that what marriage looks like, or is that what a union looks like? And then you'd see some other ones that are bad. You're like, wow. It's like, yo, he said that to her, or she said that to him, and it's almost like grocery shopping. If you place yourself in certain arenas and you're paying attention, you can really glean. You can capture good images of marriage structures. Uh, my mom and my dad, um, they were horrible. I mean, looking back, like as a kid, this is normal, right? And then when you get to, into your marriage and you're looking back and you're like, wow, they were really not in unity. I mean, they loved each other, sometimes, and they kept the family together. And but I would not model my marriage after my parents. Absolutely not.
Yeah. And that probably helped you to know what not to do by seeing that example, right?
They were good moments, and but the thing is, if you were aware, and I think that as a young married couple, my wife and I would go to church, and I'd see husbands and wives. I'd see them holding hands. I would see them, hugging in church, and I never saw that with my parents. So I was like, oh, cool, right? So it just depends. Like marriage just depends on what window you're looking out of, what tower you're looking into the world from. So that I can only give you my perspective, my window view. I don't have all the answers, and I'm still learning.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. One thing I wanted to bring up, which you kind of brought up, is we mirror what we see growing up, right? And I can say that one example for me would be, watching you and mom growing up. Even though I saw you guys go through, your highs and your lows, one thing that I always saw you guys do was makeup. Like you guys, I always saw you guys, if you had an argument, you made up and you actually made up. It wasn't like sweeping it under the rug and now, would that topic is or that issue is never resolved. It was like you guys would come back together, you would resolve it quietly. I never knew it was happening. And then, the next day I would see you guys playing. I also saw you guys were young too when you got married, but I think most people in your generation were, but you guys were very playful too. I saw that a lot. Very, very playful. Like I have vivid memories of you guys having whipped cream fights or just like you just, doing silly things with mom or kissing her in front of us and we're like, ew, just silly things. You guys were friends and I saw friendship. I saw friendship in marriage and I saw reconciliation. And I saw that it was okay to like have an argument, because some marriages, some people, they don't want to display their arguments because they don't want their kids to see those types of things. And obviously, if it's an healthy, you know, disagreement, I guess you could call it other than an argument. If you are having a healthy disagreement, I think there's nothing wrong with your children seeing that. Obviously, if it's unhealthy, then that's a whole nother topic. But it was always pretty healthy in our home, your disagreements. And like I said, I always saw you guys make up. So when I was, going through my own relationships, I was never afraid of like disagreement. I was never afraid of an argument. I was like, okay, yeah, let's resolve this and we'll get over it. And I think that's really healthy because on the opposite spectrum, if someone is if their parents never show that there's an argument and then they get in a relationship and they have an argument with someone, they're like, oh my gosh, this must not be the person for me. This must not be right. And obviously, we can use so many other examples for this, right? Good or bad, in regards to, yeah, we mirror what we see. What would you speak into that?
Well, yeah, you're right. We do mirror what we see, and I saw my parents. get into confrontations, and then you just default to that if you're not careful. So you have to be, you have to have an awareness of where you are, what you're doing, how am I handling this. You can't just, you need to be in control and almost like you're in the moment, but you're standing outside of the moment watching yourself perform. So it's very important that you don't mirror bad things that your parents did. You want to mirror good things that your parents did, or mirror good things that you experienced elsewhere, or what you want to initiate.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, I mean, like it was fun making up. Like when my wife and I would have an issue. It was worth it. Anyway,
Ew.
but
Oh my gosh.
but life is so precious. It's beautiful. So the thing is that with my the way how I feel is the day that I said to my wife, I do, it was forever.
Yeah.
Till death do us part. And for me, it's forever. So I've made a covenant, not only with God, but with my wife and all those that witnessed it, and also with myself. She is the most important person in my life, for better or for worse. And there is a lot of better, and sometimes there's worse.
Mm-hmm.
And you suck it up
Yeah.
and let's move forward. And sometimes one of us may be dragging our butts because we're feeling like emotionally hurt, or
Yeah.
we don't want to fix it right away. Let's just drag this, make him feel the pain or whatever.
Yeah.
But you at the end of the day, that this person is my best friend. We procreated 3 children. We've got 4 grandkids. What a ride.
Mm-hmm.
It's it's a beautiful ride. Yeah.
Yeah. And I agree with you in regards to pretty much like kind of holding on to issues within marriage that's going to be something that we're going to talk about a little later, because I do think that can be really damaging, and it's so important for us to have a healthy emotional life. Otherwise, that can turn into resentment and bitterness and all these other things, and we're going to get into that now. Long suffering. I wanted to bring up that word and talk about that a bit, because I feel like when we hear the word long suffering, it just sounds awful. Like marriage is long suffering. Like, oh, so it's torture? That sounds great. Like, I don't want to do this. But long suffering means endurance. And you need endurance for a lot of good things in life. If you're trying to finish any sort of race, or you're running a business, or you're in school, like you need endurance, you need long suffering, and there's good things that come from that. And I do believe that marriage can be long suffering, right? Because you have the ups and the downs. And
It's endurance.
Mhm.
100% endurance. Long suffering is probably an old English term. But I would like to use the word endurance because, when I was in high school and even middle school, I ran track. And I was better at the 100. I hated track and field, like
The
that
long
long
distance,
distance.
yeah.
It is endurance. It's
Yeah.
painful, and you gotta wait till you hit that threshold, and all of a sudden you get this new energy, and you're good again. You know,
Yeah.
different levels. So marriage is like that, and you have to endure. I remember, at the very beginning, I was always working 2 jobs, trying to make ends meet, trying to make sure that, you know, my wife had a good middle class life and the kids were dressed appropriately for school. Because, nothing worse than your kids going to school and they're wearing some kind of just ghetto something. And trust me, kids are cruel.
Oh, for sure. And even back then, it's like we really only colored kids in school,
Yeah.
so you had to be like a little extra
Oh, yeah.
mindful on that, unfortunately. But yeah, kids are mean.
Yeah, so endurance is critical because when you guys were babies, then when you were toddlers, and then when you were teenagers, all different endurance runs, all different. So they you got to be ready to run.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. Now, leaving your mother and father and clinging to your spouse, I think this is a really important topic for many people, and I don't think people understand or take this as seriously as they should. You know, when you get married, you leave your mother and father and you cleave to your spouse, you become one mind, one body, one spirit. And I think that a lot of relationships out there are really getting destroyed in the battlefield because people aren't doing this, whether it is um, the son still attached to the mother, or the daughter still attached to the father, or the daughter attached to the mother. Like, it doesn't matter which dynamic it is, but when you allow someone to have dominion over your home in that type of way, because you're not separating and having your own family, that can be really destructive. And I know that, you know, you have experience with that, and, you know, what would you like to speak into that as well?
Cut the umbilical cord. Cut it. We go through different levels in life of separation, and they're healthy. So, when you're born, you got to cut that cord, and now your body's independent. It's going to digest food. It's going to do its own thing. You're now a unit. And once you decide to get married, you need to cut the umbilical cord with whether it's your mama's favorite boy or daddy's favorite girl. You need to cut it in a healthy way, and not in the way where your mother, like for me, my mom and I were tight. Oh my gosh, my mom could do no wrong. And once I got into a relationship, as a married, couple, my mom, she tried to hang in there, and I had to put on the brakes and really just. My wife is now number one, no longer my mom. My mom was always number one. Mom. She cooked me my favorite meals, my favorite treats. But you know what? You got to cut it, because if
Mhm.
you don't, it will wreck your life. It will ruin your marriage even before it starts.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Because I remember it was difficult for you and mom in the beginning because of that aspect. And I'm not going to get into too much detail, but I do know that,
it becomes competitive.
yeah.
It becomes competitive. The mother that won't let her son go, then it creates friction between the mother and the wife.
Hmm.
And once you say I do, that's it. She is now number one, no longer your mother. She is number one.
Yeah, absolutely. And that goes for both parties. It's really important to make sure that, yeah, you put each other as number one, and you aren't allowing other people in your family to make decisions for you,
Right.
right? Like, if you have overbearing parents and they're trying to decide on, you know, like where you live, or where you're going on vacation, or where you're going for Christmas, or any of those things. It's like, no, you are your own unit. You, as a husband and wife, get to make your own decisions. And then you can tell other people what decision you made as a husband and wife. And that's how it
And
goes.
it's okay to ask your parents for opinions and guidance.
Absolutely. You can
Um,
still be close with your parents,
100%,
right?
100%.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I'm close with you. I'm close with mom.
right,
And it doesn't mean, but there's not an unhealthy relationship where I'm running to you and not Mitchell. I'm running to mom and not Mitchell,
right.
or I'm consulting with you about something before I consult with my husband, or you know what I mean? And so,
And even as your marriage, your family unit is growing, and even when you and your husband ask me for advice, I always try to be neutral.
yeah,
I always
you're
try to
very good with that.
I try to address both of you. I'm like, okay, both of you are wrong, and both of you are right, and you guys need to fix this.
But you're not neutral in the sense that you like bypass the issue and don't give the proper advice. You're neutral in just a way of respect. Like, you'll like still point out, like, okay, this is wrong, this is right,
Right.
this is the good advice, and this advice is biblical. This is advice is based on like good morals and values, like from the Bible. It's not just like your personal opinion, right? And even I'll add in, if I go to you and I'm asking you for advice, I usually tell Mitchell after, like, hey, I had this
Right.
conversation with my dad about this, and this is, the advice that he gave. Or is it okay if I talk to my dad about this topic? And and he knows he's always safe to go to you to talk to you about me too. I'm like, you can go to my dad and talk to him about me, and he does sometimes because you're a safe place, right? And it's not always easy to find that because I can tell you things and you're not going to now look at my husband differently and start judging him or treating him differently or saying, bad things to me about my marriage. It's a safe place, but that not everyone can have the wisdom and the knowledge and the understanding and the strength to stay neutral and to not always take things personally or take sides.
You have to restrain bias. So if my children are having a marital issue, for example, let's say it was you and your husband, uh, it's important for me to be neutral in my bias. Whereas, okay, this is my daughter, listen, buddy, shape up or whatever. I want to be neutral
Hmm.
because he is now my son,
Yeah.
right? So I don't want to ever look at my son-in-law as the other guy or whatever. No, he is my son, and the my grandchildren, they're my grandchildren. So
Yeah.
I want to give advice so that the whole unit is healthy.
Yeah. Because there's nothing worse than giving bad advice or taking things too personally and then causing issues where, the couple gets over the problem and then now you've just started your own problem.
Right.
And now there's a wedge, right? And so you got to be careful when people come to you with their problems and not take it personally because now let's say a friend comes to me about their boyfriend and tells you something terrible that they did and then you're cussing them out and you're saying all these bad things about them and then you guys make up and then now all you have left is what you said
That's right.
about that person and they're like,
You reap what you
you
sow.
know what I mean? So you do have to be careful. And that goes to say, like, be careful who you confide in,
Right.
right? Like, be
Right.
very careful who you confide in. And if you don't have someone healthy to confide in, go to a therapist, right?
Right.
Or if you go to church, go to your pastor,
Yeah.
go somewhere that's safe. Now, marriage exposing your wounds. I think this is a big one. You date and everything is fine and dandy and you're infatuated and all is well. And then you get married and all of a sudden the baggage just unloads and you're like, oh, okay. What would you have to say about that?
Everybody has luggage. Everybody has luggage. You know, when you say I do, people have these images of this romantic marital life, and it's going to be this, going to be that. But I bring in my suitcase, she brings in her suitcase, and we open them up. We both open them up, and there's dirty underwear, there's dirty this, there's dirty that, you know, because you bring in traditions from your past family, and even maybe two, three, four generations in the past that you're bringing in,
Yeah.
and now's the time for that laundry to be done, and it's not going to be done in one load.
Yeah. That's so
It,
true. That's a good way to put it.
it's going to take time for that laundry. You got to separate the colors. I mean, what do I know about laundry anyway? Nothing about I think I did laundry once.
Oh my gosh.
I was in Florida on a golf trip, and I did a Zoom call, and my wife, she said, "Okay, put those colors with this," and I go, "What's this little puck thing?" And she goes, "Oh my." And anyway, she guided me through the whole thing.
He's spoiled.
Right, and yeah, so luggage. We all bring in luggage, and no marriage is the same. It's marriage is like a fingerprint. It's unique. I was the young kid that was spoiled. My mom gave me everything, and my dad too. I mean, like but more. more so my mom. If dinner was gonna be cooked, my mom asked me. She didn't even ask my dad, which is wrong.
Oh,
Wrong,
I know.
right?
I will add in quickly. I remember grandma was always like, "Oh, Colin's my favorite." And I'm like, "Well, you shouldn't say that."
Didn't say that. It should be a secret,
You're right.
right?
It
Yeah.
shouldn't be a secret. You shouldn't have a favorite.
Well, it's
If
a
you do, I guess.
if you do, it's a natural human thing to have maybe a favorite child. Like really, it's
I
possible
think you
to.
can have like a favorite
But
aspect about a child, but to
yeah,
like love one child more than the other,
well, we're human, and you know what? It can happen,
in
especially.
health, unhealthy people, yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, some unhealthy too. But no, but yeah,
Who's your
it's.
favorite?
I don't have any favorites. I don't have any favorites. I do have
I'm kidding.
aspects. I do have aspects of there's certain things, certain characteristics of each child that I love, and but I don't have a single favorite child.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. Like every child is different, and so there's certain things that you connect with that child over another child,
Yeah.
right? And that's totally normal and totally plausible. And even just the aspect of boy and girl, right?
Oh yeah.
But I will say, and I don't know if I can bring this up, I think it's okay, but with grandma, I as we got older, I didn't always understand why she would say like, "Oh, Colin's my favorite. Colin's my favorite." Until recently, it was like 2 years ago, I didn't know that she had 2 children that passed
That's
that were
right.
boys. She was trying for that boy.
Right.
And so she had 2 children, 2 boys, and they both passed. And then you were that baby that
That survived.
survived. And so it's like, oh, there's trauma there.
100%.
There's serious trauma. And that's what I mean, unhealthy, right? There's a lot of trauma there. She like, oh, to go through that is just awful. I can't even think about that. And then to finally get that child, it's like, yep, that makes sense.
Especially in that era of time when they where they grew up you want that family name to carry on, and
Yeah.
you keep producing girls, and then finally she hits the jackpot. Anyway, all joking aside, yeah, so she has her first boy, her first son, and then she had 2 sons after that.
Yeah.
So I guess I think you're right.
There's a lot of
It's drama.
yeah. But back into the baggage, I really like that analogy, and I do think that's true. And I think one thing in regards to the baggage too is there's a lot of things that people grow up with and they think it's normal. They don't even think there's anything wrong with it, and then they unload that in their marriage, and the other spouse is like, "What the hell is that?"
Right.
Right? Like this isn't healthy. It's like, "What?" And you start to realize the different things within how you were raised that are unhealthy that you just thought was normal. Right. And then now you guys have to go through that together and be like, I don't want to do marriage like this, or I don't want to do parenting like this. Like, this is not normal. And you got to sort through it together. And that takes a lot of work. That, like you said, you don't finish laundry in one day. And this
No,
is a whole other type. You can finish laundry. I mean, I finish laundry in a day, but
not
with
this laundry.
not this laundry. This is years and actually a lifetime, because there's always new things that come up that you have to deal with one at a time. And yeah, it's not easy, and you need good guidance, and you need Jesus.
100%. 100%.
You do.
Well, I think for me, um, I think like my life is definitely built on the biblical foundation. And I never always, I didn't always accept that
Hmm.
because, I watched my parents, and, they were, I thought I was in a Christian home. And then as you got older and you started reading the Bible yourself and understanding what the Bible teaches, and you start, whoa, something is just not adding up here. And so you now have to learn on your own, and also plug into to other whether it's church or podcasts, but you got to find the truth
Yeah.
of how a family should should operate. But I've seen, like I said at the very beginning, from my little tower, looking out, and you only get like a certain view. But I've had friends that where their wives were so controlling, like the wife would call work like 3, 4 times a day, and the boss is like, "What's going on here?" And and then I would see other relationships where the guy was so controlled. Where were you at this time? And I lost you for 3 hours, and where were you? That is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Like you somehow have to balance that out,
Yeah.
and trust. You have to trust until the trust is gone.
Yeah. Absolutely. I agree with that. And I think, it goes back to when you're dating and like hopefully finding those red flags before you get married, but not all of us do.
Hmm.
Um, but I think that it's also understanding like, okay, why is someone controlling? Right? Why are they controlling? And usually people who are controlling are very fearful. They're very fearful people. And so because they're so fearful, they try and control everything around them so that they can feel in control, right? And so that person needs therapy, that person needs help. And hopefully, as their spouse, you can support them in that area. But usually when you see a controlling person, the first thing you think is just like, oh my gosh, that person's wicked. That person, it's just like a really negative thing. But for myself, just studying psychology and learning like, okay, well, why is someone controlling, and understanding that usually it comes from fear. It's like, oh, wow, that's kind of sad.
Or sometimes it's what they grew up with. It's a
Absolutely. A parent who was also controlling,
also controlling,
but that parent was probably fearful too.
exactly. So you see the generational.
And that child is probably fearful because of that parent, because
That's
that
right.
parent was controlling. Oh, if you
That's
don't do
right.
this, you could die. If you don't do this, this bad thing can happen. You have to do this because, and then they learn to like think in that manner, and then they become like that too.
I remember watching. I remember even seeing a wife beat her husband.
You
Right.
saw that?
Oh yeah, and it was like,
Where?
I'm not saying it. I'm not saying, but yeah, and he was a tough guy, but he was he was patient enough to take the blows and not to defend himself. He would just leave. Yeah,
Hmm.
he would just leave. But uh, those things,
That's more than just controlling. Like that.
yeah,
If you're
it's yeah,
beating,
yeah,
that's
it's a whole other level.
there's something else
It's a
going
whole
on
other
there.
level.
Yeah.
But that's usually something that is brought from another generation.
Yep.
And if you don't find the balance and the truth of how two married couple, a married couple should,
Yeah.
treat one another, if you don't plug yourself into a healthy environment,
Yes.
look at other marriages, look at the ones that are successful,
Yeah.
and they're all different, but there are some marriages where they're healthy, and for example, that the husband maybe he's a sales guy, and he's rarely ever home, or he's in the army, and he comes home, like maybe 2 months or 3 months or whatever, and yet they still thrive and do well.
Probably because they miss each other so much. My
Yeah,
goodness.
yeah, that's also yeah. And then I've seen other marriages where, especially people from third world countries, where the husband, he goes to another country and he's working,
Yeah.
and he doesn't come home for maybe like a year,
Yeah.
sometimes 2 years. I'm like, that is how do you do that?
It's a partnership at that point. It's not a friendship.
It's yeah, but at the same time too,
Sometimes you have to.
sometimes you have to,
Yeah.
because you know there's no jobs back in that country, and
But that's
he's
what you miss out on is a friendship, which
yeah,
is sad, right?
yeah, yeah. But yeah, I've seen those types of marriages, and some of them are healthy, and then there's other ones where there's another family where
You hear that all the time.
yeah,
So bad.
yeah,
So bad. But yeah, and I do agree with you. I think that you need to find your own truth, and you'll find that truth in the Bible if you read carefully. Because there's a lot of people who are going to twist the Bible out there, and there could be your own parents who twist the Bible, right? And
100%, yeah.
just because your parents say that they're Christian or whatever they may be, doesn't mean that
Show me.
you know what I mean. You will know them by their fruits. And so
Right.
I think there are a lot of people out there who grew up in Christian homes, and they might not have a good example, right? And so they have to figure that out for themselves. And I agree with you. It's yeah, looking in the Word of God, and then also finding people you can surround yourself with who have healthy marriages, and looking to your elders and again, and asking people for advice. Like, don't be afraid to like ask people, like, how did you do it? How are you doing it? You know, because it's so important.
I've watched people, and I don't know, I've never asked anybody, how do they do this? How do they do that? I'm one of those guys that won't ask for directions, and I'm totally lost, right? Thank God for GPS. But I'll watch people for a long time. I'll be watching, and sometimes I would see marriages that look perfect. I'm like, wow,
Yeah.
I want to be like that. I want to be like that. And then years later, they break up. And you're
Yeah.
like, you got to be kidding
I
me! How
know.
did those? They looked
I
perfect.
know.
I remember. I was at church one time, and another guy came up to me and said, "Hey, do you remember like 10, 15 years ago we went away to, it was somewhere in the US, it was Promise Keepers convention or something, like for men, and there was like four or five of us." And he said to me, he said, "Do you realize that you're the only one that's married out of that group?" I'm like,
Oh my
I
God.
never thought of it. I'm like, what? Yeah, I was shocked. I was the only one. I think it was four or five guys. All the other marriages failed.
I believe it. The divorce rate is so high, but if you also look at what we're surrounded with in this day and age, it's like we have cell phones, we have easy access to the internet. It's so easy to cheat. It's so easy to be, exposed to pornography. It's so
Right.
easy to be. OnlyFans, like literally, you could just press your phone and
Yeah.
bam, you're like you can cheat, or you can
So,
hire someone, or it's bad,
so
especially for men, more
for
men than women.
for me personally, I try to live clean. I live clean. Okay. I am not looking at anything that I'm not looking at porn. I'm not looking at anything, because you know what? Those images will stay in
Yeah.
your on your hard drive forever.
Yep.
So I live clean, nice and balanced, balanced, and I just don't do anything stupid, because it's an endurance.
Yeah.
It's an
It
endurance.
goes back to the endurance.
I want to be there for my wife. I want my children to have a good
Yeah.
example. I want my grandchildren to have a good example. Uh, My marriage is going to work. It's going to work. And yeah, there are times where perhaps I'm not doing what I need to do, or sometimes you think you're doing the right thing, but you're overdoing it.
Hmm.
You know, like I think an issue that I have that I'm dealing with is when I was a young man, to make ends meet, I always had two gigs on the go, always had two jobs. And now that you kids are parents, and I'm kind of like still doing the same thing.
Yeah, you're stuck in the
Yeah,
routine.
right. So I have to now, pull back and say, hey, listen, even if you're making less money or whatever, it's better to be happy than to be rich.
Absolutely. Honestly, yeah, and joyful, happy. But one thing that I took to heart, I remember we did a marriage counseling session with the pastors of our church in when we were in like a marriage group. This was years ago. Me and Mitchell just got married, and one of the things that the pastor said that really stuck with me, because I was like, "Damn, you see this so often." And he was saying, "What happens in a lot of marriages, which ends in divorce, is the wife will have children." And she'll put all of her energy into
Right.
those children and then less into her husband.
Right.
And then the husband's not getting the same attention anymore because the wife is finding all her fulfillment within the children. And then so he goes and he works more. And so now he's working more, she's focused on the children. And then it's kind of like this fork in the road where now you guys are like going and doing different things, but you're like, you turn into a partnership, and
Right.
you're kind of, you can still enjoy each other's company through the children, and you're doing things as a family. It becomes this family thing. And then you start to lose the relationship and the friendship you have with each other over time. And then the kids get older.
And they
They
leave.
don't want the mom anymore because
Don't need her.
they don't need her. And then that's when the mother is like, oh no, like I am finding my fulfillment within you. And then, she turns to the husband, and then he's so busy with work. And then they face each other and they realize we don't even know each other anymore.
Who are you?
And now you have to get to know each other
Okay.
all over again and figure out your figure out your new routines, and change all of the dynamics. And a lot of couples don't make it through that because it's too hard, and they end up divorcing because maybe there's just been unresolved resentment and bitterness that's grown throughout the years. And then they end up breaking up at that point. And so the moral of the story is to be careful not to put everything into the children, everything into work, and to find that balance and make sure that you have time for each other, and you're still having those date nights. And when you're going out for those date nights, like, don't spend your whole time talking about the kids. Like, talk about each other, talk about
Right.
your day and your hobbies, and other things. Otherwise you can get stuck in that
So that's
that
yeah.
place.
Yeah, so that's where my life is right now, is in that zone, is now my wife and I having to rediscover each other again. Now that our kids are adults, they have children, and now we have to find commonality with hobbies, and so that's where we're at right now, and I'll be working at it.
Yeah.
I'll definitely be working at it. So it's a long distance race till death do us
Yeah.
part, and I am willing and wanting to
Yeah.
to run that race. I want to get old with my wife.
That's nice. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to get old with her.
Yep. That's the goal. And now I want to talk about equally yoked and how important it is to be equally yoked. And for those of you who don't know what that means, it's pretty much being like equal on like your morals, your values, especially when it comes to like religion. If you are not equal on that playing field, like, you're going to be against each other, and that's going to be really difficult to, um, that's going to be really difficult for your marriage. And I can even speak into this myself. Like, when me and Mitchell first got married, like, I grew up in a Christian home, and then I, started dating, and I still loved Jesus, and, had a relationship with God while dating, but it was on the back burner, right? And
Hmm.
so, Mitchell and I start dating, we get married. He is also kind of in the same category, a little different. He wasn't raised in a Christian home, so he didn't have the same roots as me. But here we are, kind of putting God on the back burner. And we're living, equally yoked, I guess, at that time, because we're both kind of like in the
Yeah,
world and
that's right.
partying and
That's
having
right.
fun. And so it was easier. But then I woke up and I was like, this isn't good. I don't want to live like this anymore. Like, we need to change to be healthy. I want to be a mother. I want to be a good wife. I want to be a better person. And so I started chasing God again, and kind of started off where I was. And I had a lot more ground to work on because I was raised in a Christian home, and I've had a relationship with God my whole life. And then from that point, it was like our marriage got difficult because here I am serving God, and I'm a Christian, and I have these different morals and values. And then he is not on that page, and he wants to still be in the world, and live a different type of way. And that got really complicated. And we did our best to just not have certain conversations about certain things, but eventually it caught up to us. And I'm thankful now that's not the case, and that we're both, serving God and on the same path. But if you're both going down different roads, you're going to drift apart. You're going to
100%.
be in trouble. It doesn't matter how much you love someone. If you're a Christian and you're a Muslim, that's going to be really difficult. You're
Right.
not going to be able to do that successfully, especially if you want to have children, because then what? Right. And I think
Right.
it's not even just religion, it's even just like morals and values. Like, if you believe something else wholeheartedly and another person believes something else, like, it's when it comes to the big things. When it comes to the little things, that's fine. I like this color, he likes that color. I like to hike, he likes to draw. Like, not a big deal. But when it comes to the big things in life, yeah, you want to be equally yoked.
Correct. Yeah, equally yoked is important. Equally yoked, having the same goals, like-mindedness. You can, discuss what our lifelong goals are. Um, like for me, I'm pretty easygoing. Like, we get the house, and I'm like, all I want is a garage. That's all I want, so I can maintain the vehicles, and in the winter months, I'll be able to still maintain the vehicles and fix stuff. And my wife, she can do whatever she wants in the house. She can paint whatever color. I don't care.
Yeah, most men don't.
Yeah, whatever furniture she wants or whatever, and even finances. I just let my wife run all the finances, and if there's any difficult decisions, to be made, she'll come to me and she'll say, "Hey, we need to purchase this, or we need to buy this, or we want to invest in this. What do you think?" And we'll come to an agreement.
But I will say before you keep going, that is her strength. And I think that it's important in your marriage to know what your strength is and
Right.
what your weakness is. It's not about, well, I'm a man, so I need to do this, and she's a woman, so I need to do that. It's like, no, mom's strength is finances, so is mine. And so therefore, we're going to take care of that area so that because we're better at it and we're going to make sure we have more money, and your strength is fixing cars and, making money and doing a business and whatever that may be. And so, yeah,
Right.
you can do that. And so you want to focus on what is your strength and choose that. Don't worry about what that looks like to everyone else.
Exactly. And right, because other we would hang out with other couples, and they would say, "Oh, so uh, you know, my husband does this, this, and this around the house." And my wife goes, yeah, and my wife will, she'll say, "I do all that. I cut the grass. I do the trimming of the bush. And they'll go, what? That you need to change that. He needs to wash dishes. He needs to do laundry. He needs to." And so our fingerprint is different. So
Exactly.
so I was always an entrepreneur. I remember when we first got married. Uh, I remember I was roasting coffee for Craft Canada, and I was still delivering pizzas,
Mm-hmm.
for Mother's Pizza. And so, because things were tight. And so Becky held the house together.
Mm-hmm.
She held the kids, the house together, and I was bringing in the money,
Yeah.
right? And then years later, I was still working, at the big factory roasting coffee, and then I started painting cars and doing,
Right. I remember when you were doing that.
yeah, doing auto body,
Yeah.
and she would just feed me, wash my clothes, and I would just run,
Yeah.
right? And then later on, um, I was doing taping and mudding. I was doing that, and then I started my coffee business. And she would just feed me, clothe me, and she would just say, "Run, baby, run," and it was just perfect.
Yeah,
So
that was your dynamic.
my success is because of her,
Yeah.
because she held everything together, and she literally was the wind, beneath my wings.
Yeah.
And so now we're heading into our senior years, and now I need to back down. Like
Right.
I
Yeah.
I need to back off, and it's difficult to just to slam on the brakes.
Hmm. Absolutely.
It's difficult to slam on the brakes because you start to slow down, and you're like, "Whoa, look at the bank account. Oh, you know, I'm not used to that," right?
Yeah.
But there has to be a balance between your greatest partner, the love of your life, and money and finances.
Mm-hmm.
You have to come to some kind of a happy medium where money doesn't supersede
Yeah.
your family,
Yeah.
your wife. So just because your kids are gone doesn't mean you're no longer a family. Just the both of us are a family.
Absolutely. 100%.
Right?
100%. Now talking about how I want to talk about how marriage refines you. Because I find there'll be people out there and, let's say they're single and they'll look at, someone who's been married for 10 years or 30 years, or whether it's a male or a female, and be like, I want someone like that. Look at that girl. She's, there's that wife. Look at how she does this, this, and this. Or look at that man. Look at how he does this, this, and this. I want someone like that. Not realizing that person has been married for, let's say 20 years and has been refined through marriage and through that person to be who they are.
That's correct.
And so it's like you can't just be as a single person like asking for someone who's gone through something and oh, I want that. You have to find someone who's at the same level as you and you both refine, you both sharpen each other throughout that marriage and you become hopefully a better person than you were going into that marriage and you keep becoming a better person because yes, marriage is supposed to refine you and that's why it's not easy, right?
Right.
Because you're sharpening one another every day and you want to make sure you're doing that in healthy ways.
Absolutely. To me, it's like mixing uh, like a cake mix. And what ends up happening after the cake is baked, that product, all the ingredients is my wife and myself.
Mhm.
So somebody else cannot look and say, I want a husband like that or a woman like that. We have been mixing for years.
Yeah.
And now we've created this cake, this marital cake that's unique.
Yeah.
And so it's endurance, it's patience, and it's my wife sharpening me and myself sharpening her.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes when you sharpen each other, it hurts.
Yeah, exactly.
It hurts.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But you keep pushing through it. I was listening to something today and someone was like, if someone told you that you could have a marriage that would last 60 years, but 10 of those years would be really difficult, would you do it? And the guy was like, yeah, I would.
Yeah.
Only 10 years. But when people are in it and they go through those hard seasons, a lot of the times they don't realize, like, hey, if I can make it through this valley, there can be something good at the end. And they end up copping out, they end up divorcing or breaking up or whatever it may be because it gets too difficult. But I will say, we can't always do things on our own. And, as a Christian, it's like, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And yeah, like if we're walking through the valley, if I'm walking through something difficult in life, like I need God to help me. I need God to help me because I can't do it on my own. But that's not to say you should stay in a bad relationship that
Right.
is like
Yeah.
abusive. If you're being abused, if you're being cheated on, if you're being, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
there comes a point where you need to make a decision of like, okay, is this safe? Is this going to destroy me? Do I need to get out? But if it is, other types of things that can be, that you can overcome that, then absolutely, you need God to walk through that. You need God to walk through anything regardless.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, like you stay in a marriage that is healthy, and if it's life threatening, get out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely get out. But for me, as a young man, I remember when as soon as I was able to be on my own, it was like, God, get out, back burner. I'm in charge. And yeah, it just you were just I was just spinning my wheels going nowhere.
Yeah,
You
I hear
know,
you.
you're partying, you're buying fast cars, you're doing all kinds of nonsense, but you're not building anything.
Yeah.
But it's all about me.
Yeah. You're just feeding the
I'm
flesh.
just feeding myself good times, and then you start to realize I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah.
I'm not building anything.
Mm-hmm.
And once I plugged into God for myself, because I think as a young man, before I got married, it was you're kind of like almost like living off of your parents' Christianity,
Yeah, absolutely.
right? And then you realize, you know what? Life isn't easy. I got to deal with people. I got to deal with bosses. I got to deal with this economy. I got to I got to deal with life now. And as a young man, I started reading the Word. What is this relationship between me and the Creator? And I started reading, God's Word. What's in this for me, and what does God want from me?
Mm-hmm.
And then I started putting it together. God will help me. He will lead me. He will guide me.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, I ask God for
Me
everything.
too.
I'm like
Everything.
stupid things I'm asking God for. I'll be under a car trying to get, 4 bolts off, and I get 3 off. And I can't get that one off. I'm banging on it. I put heat on it, do all kinds of nonsense. And I'll just lay there, look at it, and I'm like, Lord, can you help me out here?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm telling you, you know how many times, God will give me an idea,
Oh,
or
yes.
I've been reefing on this thing for so long, and then I'll pray about it or whatever, and just finger loose. It's like, then somebody will say, Cook, you were banging on it and you were, you
Of
know,
course.
adding heat.
Yeah,
But you know
of
what?
course.
I'm giving God the glory. So for everything, my marriage, sickness, health, even raising you kids.
Yeah.
And even now that you have kids, I'm constantly asking God to protect you, to protect the kids.
Mm-hmm.
God is everything to me, and I'm telling you, I would never go through life
Same.
without God,
Same.
100%.
Yeah. It's not the same. I'm the same way. I ask God for everything. I was saying to Mitch the other day, I'm like, like, call me silly, but like, I'll literally go to the mall and be like, Lord, what dress should I get? What's going to look the best? It's like, honestly, the littlest things. Even my whole business was a gift from God. Late
Yeah.
nights, in the middle of the night, breastfeeding, my youngest, and God just giving me ideas, just creative ideas. And I'm like writing them down. And, it really is amazing when you can tune in and hear God's voice. And, because his voice is usually just so quiet and gentle, and he cares about us. He cares about the little things. And I think we think that he's just this big God who is too busy to care about the little things that we care about, but he cares. He really cares about the
You,
little details.
you know what? I think years ago, I remember, I think it was a Jewish guy that was talking about the the Our Father prayer, and and he said something to the effect of in Hebrew, it's Abba, and Abba means dad. And I'm thinking, whoa, are you telling me that God is telling me to call him dad? And that just blew my mind.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, that creates a whole new
Yeah.
relationship.
Yeah.
Like if I can say to God the Father, the creator of the universe, and
Yeah.
say, Daddy, I'm like,
For his
okay,
children.
you know what? If you are allowing me to say daddy,
Yeah.
then I'm gonna be asking you for a whole load of stuff. You're gonna help me in my marriage, you're gonna help me at work,
hundred
you're gonna
percent.
help me in
And
because
he wants to
because
because he loves you. He cares. How do you feel about us? You want to help us.
exactly.
Like once I became a mother, I was like, whoa, this is love. This, you experience it so differently and you care about every little thing of your child. And we're imperfect. So imagine our perfect heavenly father and how much more pure his love is and how much more he cares about
Yeah.
us.
I remember, teaching my son how to change, do an oil change, how to change struts and tie rod ends and shocks and it was such a pleasurable thing. And I remember, spying on you when you were dating, and making sure that my little girl was safe. Now that is a dad.
Absolutely.
It's a
You're
dad.
protective.
Like, some people might say this guy's creepy. I don't care.
No
That's
way.
that's
100%.
my little
You have to
girl.
protect them, right? And God feels the same way about us.
So if God is saying, call me daddy,
Yeah.
that changes everything.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Yep, I agree. Now, I want to talk about fleeing from sin. But what is sin? Because, I think sin can just be such a negative word. And I've talked about this in my biblical podcast, but sin is missing the mark. And who is the mark? Jesus. Jesus is that's what we want to aim at, is to be like Jesus. But I also think, speaking of marriage, the mark can also be our vows. And so we want to flee from sin that is going to miss the mark of, being more like Jesus, but also that takes us away from the vows that we made to our spouse. And how do we do that? Because we talked about this previously, and I think, like, with the world that we live in, with how technology is, there's just like, you can get access to anything and everything. And so I feel like a lot of marriages fail in this day and age because of such the easy access. And I think that even our generation is different. I think that people are more promiscuous. People don't respect themselves as much. People don't wait till marriage. It's so much easier to just get what you want in this day and age. And people don't care,
I
right?
I don't like the word sin, even though the reason why I don't like the word sin, it sounds very religious,
Yeah.
right? And so whenever you tell people, that's a sin, it sounds so religious. I would like to frame the word sin to, let's say you have your car, and you buy a brand new car, and that car is going to need an oil change at a certain mile. Certain mileage. It's going to need transmission fluid change at a certain mileage. It's going to need maybe a timing belt change at a certain mileage. Okay. So the manufacturer is going to give you the recommendation of how to run this car so this car will be healthy and will last long and serve you.
Mm-hmm.
I I struggled with do's and don'ts in the Bible.
Because it's like legalism. I get it.
Right. So I now look at sin as a car. So God says, don't have premarital sex. Don't commit adultery, having sex while you're married, right? Don't cheat on your wife. Don't don't gamble. Uh, why would God say that? Well, why would the dealership say change your oil every 10,000 kilometers if you're using synthetic, or change it every 5,000
Because it'll
kilometers?
break down.
Because it'll break down. So
Yeah.
God is literally giving you, the Bible is literally a manual, a
Absolutely.
human manual
Yeah.
for success and
Yeah.
for healthy families. A
Yeah.
healthy family is going to produce a healthy village.
Yep.
A healthy village, a healthy city, a healthy nation.
100%.
Just look at history. And all you got to do is look at societies that are promiscuous and just do your own thing.
Yeah.
Do whatever feels good.
Mm-hmm.
And just watch that society and see what happens to it.
Yeah. It'll fall. It gets
Yeah.
destroyed every time. Look through
Every single
history.
time.
Every single time it gets destroyed. And so I think that in this day and age, again, like we've kind of already talked about this, it's like, well, how do we avoid that from happening? Read the word of God and follow it, like ask for help.
See, the thing is that the thing about sin or missing the mark, and the Bible does say that sin is fun.
Of course.
Sin is fun.
Because it feeds the flesh and it feels good.
Right. But the end of it is death.
Yeah.
Right?
Destruction. Absolutely.
So it may be fun to, I'm going to save my money and not do that oil change. I'm going to do it. I'll do it 2 months later, 3 months later, 4 months later. Or maybe I'll just, I'll do the oil change, but I won't change the filter.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever.
Try and take shortcuts.
Yeah, shortcuts.
Yeah.
And if when we do that in life with the morality of what God is trying to show us, when we cheat,
doesn't work.
You're just cheating yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
100%. And so, yeah, I think it's important to understand kind of what you just said. And surround yourself with good people, because also if you are someone who wants to live an upright life of good morals and values and be a good husband or be a good wife, but you're hanging out with people who are, going to the club every weekend and drinking and being promiscuous or cheating or like whatever it may be, doing drugs, gambling, good luck.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You are who your friends are, and eventually they're going to rub off on you. It's not to say that you can't talk to those people at all, but you need to be a leader, and you need to definitely have some distance there, because they will lead you down that path, right? Like what do you have in common with them? So you have to be very, very careful on who you are spending time with, and what you are spending time with, whether that be your phone, who you're listening to, what podcasts you're listening to, what music you're listening to. I think it goes to say, like, what are you feeding yourself every single day? Because that is going to enter the mind and it's going to spread to the heart. So even if you're like, well, I hang out with all the best people and I don't drink and I don't smoke, but I'm listening to this awful rap music every day that talks about, having sex and all this stuff, like that is going to pollute you too. In time, eventually it will. And so, yeah, you definitely need to be careful of what you allow in. Guard your heart. Guard your heart.
You are what you eat.
Yeah.
You are what you think.
Yeah.
The Bible says, as a man thinketh, that's how he is.
Yeah.
Like you think of, like I know of this guy. He's a fantastic golfer. just incredible golfer. I mean, like he is PGA, stuff. And then you put him in a PGA situation and folds like a lawn chair,
Mm.
right? Can't handle the stress. So it's important that like we are what we eat, we are what we think. If you're going to endeavor in something, whether it's business or marriage or whatever, you need to have positive, you need to have faith, you need to, I'm going to succeed. And if you fall, get up,
Yeah.
go again,
Yeah.
get up and move on.
Yeah.
Like I've tried so many different types of businesses and none of them failed, but I just found better
Yeah,
ones.
absolutely. I'm the same way,
Yeah,
right? Better
totally.
click.
Yeah.
You figure out what you're good at.
And you find what what you love,
Yeah.
what you like. I roast coffee. Goodness gracious, I'll be roasting and I'm like I'll be roasting like a Kenya or an Ethiopia, and I gotta taste that. I gotta taste that.
Right?
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's like me too. Everything I make is like actually for me, but then I'm like,
Right.
okay, I'll share.
That's right.
Because I love my own products that, I'm like,
Yeah.
I'll make this to share. So I totally get it. Now, communication is so important within marriage. We can't skip past that. If you don't have communication, your marriage is going to fail. Point blank, period. If you don't communicate, you're not going to understand one another. You're not going to get to know each other. If you don't read the book, you're not going to know what's in the book, and we are constantly changing. We are books that are always changing. And so we have to constantly be communicating with our spouse in our relationship, or we will get lost. We're not going to know each other. And I think that communication is also one of the most important ingredients for intimacy, on an emotional, physical, and spiritual level.
When you're running a business, if you're not in touch with your inventory, you're not in touch with what's coming in financially, what's going out. Uh, you know, when I'm running Manchester Coffee, my son and my son-in-law they're giving me, feedback. They're telling me what the customers are saying. Customers will have questions and they don't know, so then they communicate it to me. The customer they want to do a decaf and a regular. Can we do this? So then they'll communicate with me.
Yeah.
Yes, we can. It goes back to the customer. We please the customer, and away we go. We'll have somebody who'll order Jamaican Blue Mountain coffee and they'll want it dark. And I'm like, what a waste. But anyway, right? But that's what the customer wants,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that's what the customer wants, that coffee dark. Or somebody wants a Kenya and they want it espresso. I'm like, oh my goodness, you're just burning off all the fruitiness of that,
Yeah.
of that delicious Kenya, right? But that communication, my son will send me, website orders, and he'll say, we need a box for this one because, we're going to ship it. If we don't communicate, it'll be chaos
Absolutely.
and the business will fail,
Yeah.
right? So it's important that the husband and the wife are communicating. Tell me how you feel.
Yeah.
Tell me what bugs you. If something that I'm doing annoys you, tell me.
Yeah, absolutely.
My wife hates it when she's changing the bed and she'll see my dry skin from the bottom of my feet, and she'll you need to get a pedicure, and then I'll hear you say, Dad, why don't you just put some oil on there, some special oils, and whatever, right? So it's communication. um if you don't communicate, then you're going to live in that state of frustration until you make that communication,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
My wife will often, she'll often say to me, especially now that golf season's here, she'll be saying, honey, I don't see you. I don't see you. I want to see you. You're right. So I'm like, honey, I'm going to fix that. I'm going to fix that. You know what? She's the most important person in my life. And if I have to give something up or slow something down to make her happy, I need to do that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. Exactly.
And if there's something that she is doing, I don't know, my wife is almost perfect. I'm like, she washes my clothes, she feeds me good meals, she keeps a beautiful house. Yeah, yeah, she's amazing.
Yeah, marriage is definitely if
Communication.
it's communication and it's giving. You give when you give, they give back, right? It's like you give your all to them and they give their all to you. And then that creates this like beautiful foundation of taking care of one another because you don't have to worry about yourself because they got you and they don't got to worry because you got them, right? And so it's selflessness, right? But communication, yes. Now I want to talk about pride, resentfulness, bitterness, and ego. That if that grows, that will destroy your
Absolutely.
marriage. Honestly, I can say that the marriages or relationships that I've watched that have like brutally failed, that's always the root. It's always the root. There is some sort of resentment or issue that did not get taken care of. Maybe there was an argument and they never got over that argument. It was never properly resolved. And then that slowly turns into resentment and it goes deeper and it goes deeper. And then the next thing happens and then it's like straw on the camel's back. That goes deeper until literally they end up just completely disliking the person. And it's like it destroys the person who's holding the resentment and it destroys their every relationship that they have. And so I think that it's so important um that if you have bitterness in your heart or you have resentment in your heart, that you find the root to that and you take care of it before it destroys your marriage.
Your greatest asset, one of the greatest assets in a marriage is
Yeah,
forgiveness.
absolutely.
Forgive. You want to have a bag that's full, overflowing of forgiveness. And I'm not trying to say that, oh, I forgive you, oh, I forgive you, I forgive you. I, I'm saying that within reason, you need to forgive.
Yeah.
It needs to flow like candy
Yeah.
because there's nothing worse than an offense being done or something that annoys and you hold a grudge or resentment and it shows up in the bed, it shows up at the dinner table, it shows up in the dates, it shows up in all kinds of
Yeah.
if you don't learn to forgive,
Yeah.
you're in trouble. Forgive, forgive, forgive.
And the reality is, like, every person in your life is going to disappoint you or hurt you in some sort of way
Yes.
because we're
Yes.
all human and you can't avoid that. And so, for this person that you choose to do life with, you better be good at forgiving because that is marriage, is being good at forgiving. And obviously, there's a difference between that's when communication comes in. It's like if
Right.
someone does something to you that's hurtful, you need to have communication about it. They shouldn't do it again. And then you forgive them. Obviously, if someone's just like constantly hurting you and you're constantly forgiving, that's not okay.
That's not
That's
okay. Yeah.
unacceptable.
That's
And
not healthy.
yeah, that's
It's
not
not healthy.
healthy. But when it comes to the little things and even some of the big things, like, yeah, you got to forgive. And I think we have to remind ourselves that forgiveness isn't easy. It's not supposed to be easy. Sometimes you got to forgive and you got to cringe your way through it. And sometimes, there's been times where I have forgiven my husband and I'm saying it, but I don't mean it. I'm saying it in the mind, but it's not in the heart yet.
Into
But
the mouth
but
only.
what goes to the mind will eventually go to the heart. And so I'll keep forgiving. I'll do it. Okay, a week later, I'm going to forgive again. A week later, I'm going to forgive again. I'm going to ask, Lord, I'm struggling with this. Help me to forgive, and you have to work through it because if you don't forgive and you want to hold bitterness and a grudge or whatever because you don't think that person deserves forgiveness, you are destroying yourself in the end. That is going to end up destroying your heart and your health. And so we don't just forgive for others, we also forgive for the health of ourselves so
That's
that
right.
we don't carry bitterness and resentment. Because once you open that door to bitterness and resentment, you let a whole bunch of other stuff in and it will literally destroy your life. You
Yeah.
cannot live.
Sickness, disease, all kinds of
Seriously,
things.
yeah,
All that
absolutely.
stuff.
Physical illness, when you're
100%.
living like that. Because, and I don't want to get too deep into that, but we give frequencies and,
Right.
all of that stuff. But even just cortisol, like if you're constantly releasing cortisol in your body, like that's not good for your body. There's so many things.
Well, the communication and forgiveness, uh, all those, go hand in hand. Because
Yeah.
if I'm doing something that you don't like and you resent me, but you don't communicate it,
Yes.
that is a disaster.
Yeah.
That is a disaster. Oh, why did you sleep downstairs? Or why did, or how come she took the separate car when we're going to the same place? Or,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. You need to communicate. We have to communicate, within our within our marriages in order to fix it, right?
Absolutely.
If you don't get an engine light on your car, you're in
You
trouble.
know what I
You
mean?
need that engine
You
light.
need that engine
So
light. If
so
you suppress, right? I always say it to people, I'm like, some people, this comes with physical health and emotional health and spiritual health. If you are going through your marriage and you're like, you know what, I don't want to deal with any of this, I'm going to shove it all under the rug, and you just suppress, now that engine light isn't coming on anymore, and you're gonna explode.
yeah, yeah, you're gonna blow your engine. You're gonna blow your engine. It's like putting tape over the engine
Yeah,
light,
literally. That's a better
right?
one. It's
Right?
a better one.
It's there, but I can't see it.
Right?
Right? Ignorance is
It's
bliss.
not
No, it's
bliss.
not
It's
bliss.
not bliss.
Yeah, so you have to keep attacking, those things. Yeah, communication, forgiveness. I mean, like I'm like a kid, and I need a lot of forgiveness. You tell a kid, don't go in that puddle, and then you turn your back, kids in the puddle. That's me. I'm in the puddle again. I'm in the puddle again. I need that forgiveness, and you know, life isn't that hard. I think a lot of times we make it hard because we harden our hearts.
Absolutely.
You know, you know what? Life is so short. It was just, it was just the other day I was holding you in my arms. It was just the other day I was holding my son, and we were playing Tonka toys in the sand. It was just the other day, when we had our youngest, and you guys were mad at the nurses because of how they were handling her. It's their job, and they're just doing babies. Just
Oh,
the
I
way.
don't remember that.
Yeah. Well, you and Terrence were mad at the nurses, the way how they were handling little Michaela, and the needles and stuff like that. But life is so short. You know what? Make it work. Go for the long investment. It's a long investment.
Absolutely.
It's worth it.
Yeah.
It's worth
If you put your money into some stock, sometimes it goes up, sometimes it goes way down. You're like, oh, should I pull out? I don't know. I'm going to stick it through and see if I can get my money back, and sometimes you do if you have,
it. And you don't invest in those quick, rich, short term, right?
exactly.
Because those can crash and burn
Yeah.
really quick. Go for the long one that's stable,
Yeah.
and that will give you a good return. So
Absolutely.
my wife, she is my greatest investment, and I'm getting great returns.
There you go.
Great returns.
There you go. Well, I hope this podcast was helpful to you guys. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And if you guys want some really good coffee, go to manchestercoffee.ca or .com.
.ca.
Yeah, manchestercoffee.ca. They do delivery. You will not be disappointed.
I roast it myself. I'm the roaster. My dad was a coffee farmer. Uh, uh, I grew coffee, harvested coffee, love coffee.
Yes. And, I go to the facility often and he's teaching me how to do it. I see the whole process. It's amazing, guys. So, yeah, I hope this was informative, and we'll see you guys at Around the Kitchen Table. God bless.
God bless.